And may I say that on an evening like this, we're very proud to be Americans. We recognize how fortunate we are. Fortunate that these men and women can say what they believe, and that you who listen to them, if you don't like it, can turn to another channel. Thank you and good night.
Now to present the next award from New York, Elaine May of the comedy team of Mike Nichols and Elaine May.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am very proud to be able to present the next award. It is a special award, special not only in that it's not listed tonight in any of the categories, but also in that it's the first award of its kind ever to be presented by the Academy. There will be a lot said here tonight about excellence, and the creative, the artistic, and the skillful will all be recognized and rewarded. But what of the others in this industry? Seriously, there are men in the industry who go on year in and year out, quietly and unassumingly producing garbage. Very proud to have been chosen by the Academy to present tonight's special award to the man who has been voted the most total mediocrity in the industry, Lyle Gluck.
This is the proudest moment of my life. Getting here was not easy. I'd like to tell you briefly how I did it. Firstly, no matter what suggestions the sponsor makes, I take them. And last, and most important of all, I think, I have tried to offend no one anywhere on earth.
What was your job?
Him. What, in San Clemente or in the White House?
In the White House and then San Clemente.
In the White House, it was assistant in the press office, and I did a little bit of everything. I occasionally talked with him and wrote things for him, although the first time I talked to him, he called me on the phone, and I was so nervous I fell off the chair and was falling downstairs periodically, holding on to the telephone, trying to hang on.
And then did he ask you to go out to San Clemente?
And he threw Ron Ziegler and Jack Brennan asked me to go to San Clemente, so I assume that he certainly approved of everybody.
And your job there was?
I worked on the book, the memoirs, and my job, how did I draw this straw, you'll be saying to yourself, my job was to do Watergate in the final days.
He wrote in longhand, right, on that yellow pad?
He would write in longhand, he would dictate. We would put together lengthy compilations of what had happened, what other people had said, and then he would dictate to that. Then Frank Gannon would take the dictation and he would rework it, then it would go back in again. It was very much a dialogue.
What took you from that to this business? What was your first job at this business?
My first job was before that. I was at a local station in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, you're from, right?
Yes, I started
so
out doing the weather.
you went from Louisville to the White House?
I went from Louisville to the White House. I went from Louisville and television to the White House, and I started out doing the weather, and as you and I have talked, I couldn't see anything because my eyes are worse than yours.
Worse than yours.
Yes, that's right. So that I was always taking sort of a flying guess at what was on the weather map.
Now from New York, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening and welcome to Prime Time. As you must have heard by now, there is a seismic tremor moving through Washington tonight after those allegations about the president. We have some new information to add to what you've been hearing throughout the day as Sam Donaldson continues to follow it all from the White House. Sam?
Diane, this is a bizarre story here at the White House and a dangerous one for President Clinton. It begins different. Miss Tripp recorded Lewinsky reciting graphic details of a sexual relationship she claimed she had with President Clinton. And Miss Tripp took her recordings to Whitewater Independent Counsel Kenneth Starr. On January 13th, at Starr's request, Tripp asked Lewinsky to come to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel near the Pentagon in Virginia. Tripp was wearing a recording device fitted by the FBI. There, they reportedly talked as they had before of suggestions from the president's friend Vernon Jordan that they shade their stories in official depositions. Further, it turns out Lewinsky gave Tripp a carefully crafted document, at this point origin unknown, outlining points she should make in her deposition that would alter the story she had previously related to investigators. A document on how to lie.
This is only the beginning.
Thanks very much, George Stephanopoulos, for joining us. And Diane.
All right, Sam, thanks to you. As we've said, it's quite a story, and we're not just saying this perfunctorily. We're not just saying it out of obligation. All the facts are not in. We don't know the real story yet, but we will be following it fully and carefully in the days ahead. And we'll be right back with more Prime Time.
Until the report came out, Wildenstein had been thought to be a victim of the Nazis, forced to flee to New York, where he had publicly criticized those who collaborated with the Nazis at the very time the Paris Gallery was brokering art for the Germans.
I feel, very deeply about the fact that people should not profit from the ashes of the Holocaust.
As head of the World Jewish Congress, Edgar Bronfman led the effort to identify gold stolen by the Nazis. And now he wants to do the same thing with art stolen by the Nazis from Jewish families.
What the Nazis did, they didn't just take their gold and their paintings and their property, they also took their identities.
Bronfman was outraged when we showed him the World War II files on George Wildenstein.
Shame on him. That's all. Shame on him. Nazis did. They didn't just take their gold and their paintings and their property, they also took their identities.
That is not true. I did not ask anyone to tell anything other than the truth. There is no improper relationship, and I intend to cooperate with this inquiry. But that is not true.
No improper relationship. Define what you mean by that.
Well, I think you know what it means. It means that that there is not a sexual relationship, an improper sexual relationship, or any other kind of improper relationship.
You had no sexual relationship with this young woman.
There is not a sexual relationship. That is accurate. We are doing our best to cooperate here, but we don't know much yet. And that's all I can say now. What I'm trying to do is to contain my natural impulses and get back to work. I think it's important that we cooperate. I will cooperate, but I want to focus on the work at hand.
Just for the record, to make sure I understand what your answer means, so there's no ambiguity about it.
There is no.
All right, you had no conversations with this young woman, Monica Lewinsky, about her testimony, possible testimony, before in giving a deposition?
I did not urge anyone to say anything that was untrue. I did not urge anyone to say anything was untrue. That's my statement to you.
Did you?
Ken Starr, but we haven't seen anything of this magnitude during this presidency, and something immense happened today that's going to change this presidency.
Jim, allegation. America understood these charges against Bill Clinton back in '92 when he was elected.
For some, it was a joke.
If, in fact, Hillary cut him off back in 1992, interns are fair game.
What is your obsession with Bill Clinton's wiener?
Prosecutor Ken Starr was scheduled to have a news conference earlier today. Now let's listen to the president.
Sir, exactly what the relationship was with Mr. Lewinsky and whether the two of you talked by phone, including any messages you made.
Let me say, first of all, I want to reiterate what I said yesterday. The allegations are false, and I would never ask anybody to do anything other than tell the truth. Let's get to the big issues there about the nature of the relationship and whether I suggested anybody not tell the truth. That is false. Now, There are a lot of other questions that are, I think, very legitimate. You have a right to ask them. You and the American people have a right to get answers. We are working very hard to comply, get all the requests for information up here, and we will give you as many answers as we can, as soon as we can, at the appropriate time, consistent with our obligation to also cooperate with the investigations. And that's not a dodge. That's
Larry Moore is Larry Moore! Right now! I'm telling him! Larry, calm down.
Pushing.
Back up, please.
You gotta come back and down.
Let me simply say that as much as I understand the questions that you have, I'm operating under constraints of confidentiality.
Things are heating up at the Sundance Film Festival, even if the temperature outside is freezing. Movie execs are spending millions of dollars in Park City, Utah, in hopes of snaring the next hit independent film. Sherry Sylvester reports one film is turning out to be too hot to handle.
103 films will be shown over 10 days here in Park City, Utah. But this year's Sundance Film Festival may be remembered for the one that got away. Kurt and Courtney, a documentary about rocker Courtney Love and her late husband Kurt Cobain, was pulled after Love threatened to sue its maker.
You do get a portrait of someone who's extremely controlling, and if they don't get what they want, will go to any lengths to prevent something from coming out, which is exactly what she's done with this film.
At the Park City Elks Lodge, Kurt and Courtney was screened by Slam Dunk, a self-proclaimed alternative festival to Sundance.
The film is going to air on the BBC in about 9 months' time, a year's time, and it will come out theatrically in this country, and, you know, we'll do what most films do, which is they're seen by people.
President Clinton, the intern, and the new sex scandal.
All hell's broken loose, and once you get something like this out, it's hard to pull it back.
While the allegations took over national headlines, they began on the internet. Matt Drudge and his Drudge Report beat Newsweek.
I'm taking on a media establishment that basically I think has not been honest with the American people in telling all they know about this president. And they're going to have to live with that mistake in the history books.
And good evening, and welcome to the program. Well, a drudge it is, and a drudge it has become, to carry on thusly pleasurable, although it may be at times, of course. It is a life of drudgery in this laundry room of intrigue that you find us leading at this time. And by that, I'm referring with some effort at punsmanship to all of the attention that's been accorded to that Mr. Drudge, who seems to be getting the extremely extraordinary credit of being the internet Woodward and Bernstein. Not that he's actually put a lot of labor into what he's being credited for, but the fact is that no less an authority on things infotainment has given Mr. Drudge the nod as being the person who broke, their term, who broke the story of Monica Lewinsky and President Clinton and their tryst, and obviously with an eye toward what the implications of that would be I don't read Mr. Drudge's internet column, and so I have obviously no idea as to how in-depth he got with it. But my understanding from seeing coverage of the Drudge report is that he merely passes along rumors that he picks up in other press sources, and that occasionally he may be able to receive from tipsters himself. But some of his statements there about, you know, not fully informing the American public are rather ironic in terms of Mr. Drudge himself, who is in a great deal of hot water for having passed along a rumor which he didn't even bother asking the subject of the rumor for a response on, which was Sidney Blumenthal, a real journalist who has traded in his credentials to some extent to work for President Clinton in the last few years, being the target of a Drudge report item that said that he had had some sort of a history of wife beating. And as of the time, some considerable time after the event of him having published that information, Drudge was the subject of an ABC Nightline report, and still implied that sooner or later he was going to come up with some sort of corroborating evidence, some sort of police report or something, although I think there was an extremely long time frame between the initial accusation and the ABC coverage, so the suspicion is that Drudge will never be able to come up with anything to substantiate the allegation. And he is being sued, along with other parties, for millions of dollars by Sidney Blumenthal. And the interesting thing about that, of course, is that Drudge also is featured there on Entertainment Tonight, saying that once essentially the cat is out of the bag on something like this, it doesn't go back in. Although, really, that's not our experience at all. First of all, we've never been the subject of a Nightline report. And don't really expect to be, given our rather regular habit of criticizing network news, including, as you've seen this evening, and fairly regularly, that of ABC. And the irony in all of this, to put a finer point on the big I word here tonight, is that as you saw, some of the footage there, the talk radio guys were talking about the hot story of the day, of course, which is Mr. Clinton and the intern, which, of course, may lead to his resignation or some other dissolution of his presidency. And their source, as they had the ABC cameras in the room at least, but probably the regular source, was a desktop computer which had internet access, and where they were looking actually at the ABC News page, where in the famous photo of Monica Lewinsky was featured rather heavily. And again, getting back to the irony of the situation for our particular purposes, this is actually a printout of an interior page to the ABC news page, abc.com, which is called Mr. Showbiz. And Mr. Showbiz here has an article on Courtney Love called Nick Broomfield and No Love Lost, dealing with the dismissal of the Kurt and Courtney movie from the lineup at Sundance Film Festival. So I know it's a bit demanding to ask you members of the audience there to track with this analysis. On the face of it, the easiest explanation I can give is that, of course, things stick to President Clinton. At least in this particular case, allegations of this nature are sticking with the ability of barnacles. And yet, the wid, Courtney Love, who claims that anytime she sticks her finger into the air, muck is likely to gravitate toward it, has actually escaped, as far as I could tell, the attention of most of the major media. You did see a CNN report on that on Showbiz Today, but they covered it in brief a week ago. that is last week, the week prior, when the story first surfaced, and was in the New York Times after all. And they did do a subsequent report, which of course excluded any mention of the source of the controversy, really. The source of that controversy really being the fact that Broomfield's film contains material based on, of course, the research that we've pioneered here, which is the allegation that Kurt was murdered. That doesn't make it into the ABC News page. It certainly didn't make it into a subsequent report I saw on ABC having to do with Sundance. ABC did, on their Saturday broadcast, have images of Cobain, as you've seen, and Courtney Love, and they did stretch out to about a 20-second length, a report that this was being squashed, as they claimed, essentially for copyright infringement reasons, the controversial film. And yet, the story does continue, as you've seen there on CNN, and also in something by The Hollywood Reporter. This showed up actually in the Post-Intelligencer. It's untouched, as far as I can tell, by Post-Intelligencer personnel, which is probably a very good thing for the truth coming out, except for the fact that they did, in fact, publish it. And it does even contain the phrase, well, this is the sentence, of great interest to us. The film spends much of its 99 minutes, however, exploring the possibility that Cobain was murdered and that his wife, whom he allegedly was divorcing, may have been involved. So there you see the actual Kurt was M phrase contained in a news story, which is authored by this news agency, Hollywood Reporter. And we find ourselves dwelling on it in terms of either calling it irony or perhaps synchronicity, anything, of course, other than conspiracy, because that's the word that gets you into more trouble than anything else, should you use it and not be authorized to do so by, you know, Rune Arledge or someone like that, or a Don Ohlmeyer, perhaps. So we will stay away from the conspiracy word for the time being, except to say that it is an awfully small world at the top of the power structure, and you can certainly see that in the strange assortment of video there at the beginning of the program. We've got, you know, Dick Nixon introducing a comedy skit, you know, way back in the 50s at an Emmy show, starring Elaine May and Mike Nichols, who is years later to become the husband of one Ms. Diane Sawyer, former Miss America's Junior Miss, and secretary to Dick Nixon himself, in what at least one national magazine has called, with a certain sense of purpose, apparently involved in their headline, a hands-on job with the Nixon administration. They claimed that Diane Sawyer had held. And who was holding Ms. Sawyer at any time during her tenure, both in San Clemente or at the White House, is hard to say, except that if you're missing my point here, it's not entirely out of the question that news bunny and beauty queen Diane Sawyer was a sort of Monica Lewinsky. That is, that she had had a rather Lewinsky-like experience with the trickster herself. And of course, I only say that in terms of the headlines and rumors, etc. Whether it's true or not, I would have obviously absolutely no idea, but the irony being that, of course, even the Clinton thing, which is leading to people as prominent as Carl Bernstein, indicating that it may be the end of his presidency, is still a rather unsubstantiated rumor, although, of course, obviously a lot of people in the news biz are expecting the supporting documentation to be along just about any day now, including Ms. Sawyer, who's now becoming rather well known for her urging of her comrades in the news business not to rush to judgment. And actually, ABC perhaps could have prevented themselves from rushing to judgment in the case of featuring Mr. Bronfman in the same broadcast that they were dealing with the Monica Lewinsky affair as an authority on the immorality of exploiting stolen art and stealing the identity of artists, because, of course, that is the problem with his holding of the Cobain copyright at this time through the Seagrams Corporation, which Mr. Bronfman owns. And that is all for us for this evening. We thank you for joining us, and please do so again. We'll be back, of course, next week.
Good evening, and once again, it's time for Kringen, starring me, Shannon Kringen. And tonight, it's going to be open, honest, frank discussion. I'm going to talk about some emotion.